Hi guys, this is Hirosaki. This story is all about what if Naruto was in Justice League. For decades, he had traveled from one corner of the known universe to the other, searching for a way back to his home planet. But after nearly 100 years of fruitless efforts, even with his legendary stubbornness, Naruto grew weary. Now, he had to let it go. Before we start, kindly like and subscribe to this channel, and look over the description box for the author of this amazing storyline. Welcome aboard. Chapter 36 Passion. A peculiar spaceship flew at a constant speed in the skies above the Aegean Sea. After a while, it started its descent towards a seemingly empty area with no landmass in sight. So, this is how you've managed to stay hidden from the world all these centuries. An illusion spell. Naruto said, impressed. The reason for his amazement was that there was an archipelago of islands of several miles across each that had been hidden by the concealment spell. To cast a spell of such proportions was definitely the work of a god. Don't land too fast. Give them time to gather their troops. They're going to feel safer if they have their weapons in their hands. Wonder Woman suggested. Naruto looked at her weirdly. Why would they need weapons? You're hiding something from me, aren't you? The princess dressed her voice awkwardly. Actually dash. Don't even think about lying, shrew. Kyuubi growled from the side. He was not going to forget any time soon that Diana betrayed him and left him to get beaten up by Naruto. What did you call me? She said and glared daggers at the fox. Fox and woman glared at each other intensely for a few very long moments. But a sudden flick on the forehead snapped both their heads up, and they let out yelps of pain. The hell was that for, dipshit? Kyuubi shouted. Naruto, you're going to pay for this. Diana also yelled. Wonder Woman and Kyuubi looked at each other briefly, communicating through their eyes. A mere second was enough to reach an understanding, and then they nodded at each other. When they both turned their head to look at him at the same time, he felt a chill go down his spine. Guys, cut the nonsense. Look, we're going to land soon, no time to fool around now. Guys dash? Now, it was his time to yell for help when the fox and the Amazon jumped on him. He had tried to break them and stop them from fighting, but the two ended up joining hands against him. Naruto learned that day to never get between Kyuubi and Diana again. By the time Kyuubi and Wonder Woman got their fill from beating up the blonde, several hundred women riding on horses had already gathered up on the island below. I assume they don't like visitors? Naruto said when he saw the large group of women wielding primitive weapons. Not one bit. Especially when it's a man. Wonder Woman said quietly. Should I kill them? The ever-trigger-happy Bijou suggested from the side, only to be met with two pairs of eyes glaring at him. I'm just saying. The fox pouted. Their spaceship was now only 100 feet above the ground, floating in the air. How should we deal with them? Naruto asked when he saw the hundreds of women pulling on their bows, aiming at the ship. Preferably, he did not want to fight against them. After all, it was the first time he was going to see his future mother-in-law. What would she think of him if he started beating the crap out of her people? Makes me think of that documentary with the tribes of savage cavemen from the jungle of South America. He thought absent-mindedly, images of indigenous people throwing their spears and arrows at helicopters playing at the front of his mind. You just thought of something rude, didn't you? Diana abruptly said, throwing him a mean look. He was a little freaked out. I've heard of a woman's intuition, but this, bruh. He wisely chose to not answer her question. Diana sighed. Open the trapdoor, I'll go talk to them. You've been exiled from Themyscira already, but it looks like you still haven't learned your lesson. What's the reason you're bringing a man to Themyscira again, sister? A red-haired woman clad in a full-body armor shouted. The first time when Wonder Woman brought men on the Paradise Island had been when she brought the rest of the Justice League to deal with Faust and save the Amazons who had been turned into stone by the sorcerer's artifact. Despite that she had saved the lives of everyone on the island, due to their laws, Hippolyta had been forced to exile her. Men stepping on the land of Themyscira was a great taboo, apparently even big enough to cancel the merits of saving the lives of hundreds of Amazons. "It's good to see you too, Artemis," Diana replied kindly, trying to ignore the redhead's aggressive tone. Before the rest of the Amazons had a chance to start shouting, she continued, "I returned to Themyscira under the orders of Zeus himself. I was ordered to head into Tartarus by myself and slay Hades as proof of my loyalty to the gods of Olympus." Loud murmurs broke from the army of women, and even the headstrong Amazon, Artemis, looked shocked. Princess, what have you done?" she asked wide-eyed. To everyone gathered there, Zeus' orders to Diana to go to Tartarus were no different than a death sentence. In their eyes, Diana was basically ordered by the gods to commit suicide. "What about the man that came with you on the ship?" a dark-skinned woman asked. "He chose to follow me into Tartarus and help me in my task." Her words brought another wave of unrest among the Amazons. A man chose to dash? No way. Amazons were women who had died unjustly at the hands of men in their past lives. As a way of alleviating their suffering, goddess Aphrodite had taken their souls and reincarnated them into the current Amazons. Goddess Athena had taken a liking to the goddess of love's endeavor, and joined hands with her, becoming one of the patron goddesses of the Amazons. While the Amazons worshipped all the Olympian gods, Aphrodite and Athena were the deities that Amazons held in the highest esteem in their hearts, something that was proven through the fact that only these two goddesses had a temple dedicated to them specifically on the island of Paradise. That said, the Amazons had been taught from the beginning to hate men. Misandry was a major part of their culture, especially after the way that Hades dragged them into his betrayal of the Olympian gods. For them, it was unthinkable that a man had willingly chosen to follow Wonder Woman and go to die together with her. Men were devils in their eyes. It was while the Amazons were befuddled and did not know what to do that their queen finally arrived on the beach too, riding her white horse. "Diana, you didn't tell me that you were in a relationship with a man," Hippolyta said snidely and looked at the man with reddish-blonde spiky hair next to her daughter. His slit red eyes and the 3 pairs of dark scars on his cheeks were making her secretly nervous. It was not too far off to mistake him for a demon. "Mother I dash," Diana began to say but fell silent when she saw Artemis, the Amazon with long red hair coming into the throne room, next to Hippolyta. "Don't mind me, go on," Artemis said. "I'm also curious to hear what made you fall in love with a pig." Bang! A massive appendage slammed into the Amazon's body, violently launching her into one of the walls of the rooms. She lost her consciousness on the spot. "Karama! What the hell are you doing?" Diana shouted in disbelief. It was the first time Naruto and Kyuubi had ever heard the princess cuss. Nonetheless, Kyuubi did not seem to care. Having grown to be as large as a horse, the 9-tailed fox looked exactly like a demon. His deep growls and his crimson-red yes sent terror into the eyes of anyone that saw him. The Yellow Lantern Corps had tried to recruit him in the past for a good reason. His ability to provoke fear was unmatched. A bunch of ants not knowing their place, the fox said angrily. He did not mind it when he and Naruto were calling each other names and beat the crap out of one another. But the moment that anyone else disrespected Naruto, Kyuubi would fiercely defend him, and when someone spoke ill of the fox, Naruto would teach those people a lesson too. Seeing the way that the Amazons as a whole were disregarding Naruto, and then hearing Artemis calling him a pig was the last drop that spilt the glass. "I held back out of respect for you, Diana," Kyuubi said, "but make no mistake. I won't allow anyone to treat me or Naruto like garbage." He would never allow anyone to treat Naruto like the villagers in Konoha had treated him when he was a kid, or how his female teammate abused him on a daily basis. If Naruto did not stand up for himself due to various reasons, the fox was going to do it. "Did you hear that, woman?" Kyuubi turned his head and growled at Hippolyta. Naruto facepalmed himself. "There goes my good first impression." He blew out a long sigh. "All right, calm down everyone," he said eventually. Listen, I know some men are horrible, but it goes the same for some women too. There are good and bad apples everywhere. You can't just dump everyone in the same pot. You mean to say you're one of the good apples? Hippolyta asked. Is me following her to Tartarus to kill a god not proof enough that I love her? Naruto said, looking straight into her eyes. Besides, there's a much easier way to see the truth of my words, isn't it? This time, Hippolyta could not mask her surprise. Do you mean dash? Yes, use the lasso of truth on me. Naruto confirmed. You don't need to do this, Naruto. Diana unexpectedly refused. I've never doubted your feelings for one moment. But your mother does. Just give her the lasso, Diana. Think if you were a parent, wouldn't you want to see what your daughter's suitor really thinks in his mind? I know I would. It's understandable. Though still not happy, she eventually handed the lasso of truth to her mother. Appearing rather hesitant, the queen of the Amazons came to Naruto, put the lasso loosely around his neck, on his shoulders. Her eyes were filled with curiosity as she looked at him up close. Not many people would willingly give someone the permission to find out what truly lay in the depths of their heart. You can ask me anything you want, he said, giving her the green light. Hippolyta nodded at him. Then, the lasso of truth started to glow with a golden light. The lasso of Hestia commands you to speak the truth. Answer me, do you love Diana? Naruto's face winced. His mind instinctively reacted to the magical intrusion that tried to scour through his thoughts. It feels similar to the Uchiha's Genjutsu. I could break out of it I wanted. But in spite of those thoughts, he did not fight against it, and let the lasso control him. Yes, I do. Hippolyta asked. Why are you willing to follow Diana into Tartarus? Because I love her. I will protect her, even at the cost of my life. If Wonder Woman was the same person from a year ago, the one from before she had met Naruto, hearing someone saying those words, especially a man, would provoke anger in her. She was the proud princess of the Amazons. She did not need someone to protect her, much less a man. Currently, however, his words filled her heart with warmth. Naruto did not often tell her that he loved her, but whenever he did, she felt butterflies in her stomach. Hippolyta did not miss the tender expression on her daughter's face, nor the love smoldering in her blue eyes. Even before she asked the first question, the fact that Naruto brought forth by himself the suggestion to be tested under the lasso of truth had already won over her trust. Seeing the way Diana was looking at him made her understand that the two of them truly held deep feelings for each other. Since that's the case, I might as well give them a little push, a little help. The queen thought to herself. Unlike other Amazons, she did not abhor all men. She knew that there were good people among men too, as Naruto said. It was just that she did not want her daughter to make the same mistake as she had done, to fall in love with the wrong person, with a man that would use her and then throw her away. But now that she was convinced that Naruto was sincere about his feelings for Diana, she did not mind them being together. Therefore, she decided to actually support them, as a mother should. What are your plans in regards to Diana in the future? Hippolyta asked, indirectly giving Naruto the chance to say that he wanted to marry her. Under the coercion of the lasso of truth, Naruto answered. I want us to leave the earth together because the rabble of this planet does not deserve her. I want her to be happy. I want to marry her, and have a daughter with her. Diana was on the verge of tearing up. Hippolyta appeared to be moved too by his answer. I think it's enough, mother. The princess said. She wanted nothing more than to hug him at that moment. All right. But I have one more question. Hippolyta said. What is that you like the most at my daughter? Her muscles. Naruto replied. QB. Diana. Hippolyta. The three of them looked at Naruto with blank faces, in disbelief. The lasso of Hestia commands you to speak the truth. Hippolyta repeated in an authoritative voice. What do you love the most at my daughter? Answer me. When Hippolyta asked that question again, Kyubi thought to himself. Oh boy. Now she's done it. You opened a can of worms you shouldn't have. As someone who had been with Naruto from the very day he was born, the fox knew his character better than anyone else. He knew what was about to come. Naruto's face stiffened for a moment, a sign that the lasso was truly working on him, and then he said again. Her muscles. When the effect of the lasso ended, he could not help saying in annoyance. What, you were expecting me to say her big boobs or something? Yes, I love her boobs too, but it doesn't compare to her muscles. Naruto. Diana cried out in embarrassment and flushed. But when she saw his eyes roaming up and down her body shamelessly, and his lecherous grin, her face turned even redder, all the way to her ears. The blonde-haired Amazon queen looked at him still with a blank face, not knowing what to say. Interpreting her being at a loss of words as her judging him for his tastes, Naruto said self-righteously. Boobs are great, and ass is great too. But her muscles? That's where it is. He was speaking with passion, his slit red eyes burning with conviction. Long legs with strong calves, thick thighs, and wide hips contrasting with a thin waist. A strong core with six-pack abs and a defined V-cut combined with a pair of large breasts and a toned, big ass. Now, he was speaking even more fervently, with reverence in his voice. The peak of athleticism meeting the peak of female body attractiveness, resulting in perfection given human form. You scrubs know nothing. How can someone look so strong but tender too at the same time? How can someone have such well-defined muscles, but also exude such feminine grace at once? I bow to Aphrodite for gifting Diana her blessing because she is a work of art. She is divine. At that moment, Hippolyta lost it and just stared at him with her mouth open. The sound of a sword being unsheathed was heard. Why, you shameless swine? Mother, shall I kill him? Wonder Woman's face was boiling. She began to stutter as if she could not contain her shame and anger anymore. She almost saw white in front of her eyes for a second. However, Naruto seemed oblivious to her morbid embarrassment. With his eyes closed and his fist clenched in front of him, he said, his voice filled with zeal. If I am to die one day, I have a dream that I would die suffocated by her thick thighs and dash. Arg. Diana could no longer take it. With a battle cry, she lunged at him. Kyubi was not one to care about humans' customs and common sense, but at that moment, if foxes could blush from embarrassment, he would. He covered his face with one of his tails and turned around, ashamed at being associated with someone as shameless as Naruto. I don't know this guy. I don't know this guy. He muttered to himself, and made himself small again. He slipped out of the throne room, not able to bear with watching the ongoing scene anymore. Several hours later, Wonder Woman was thrashing around in her bed, kicking the air with her legs. Burying her face into her pillow, she let out a scream. She had just recalled again the scenes of her mother interrogating Naruto with the lasso of truth. How could he say something like that? In front of my mother. She let out another muffled scream in her pillow. Then, she turned on her back and looked at the tall ceiling of her royal chamber with a blank look on her face. I won't be able to look my mother in the eyes for years. I want to die. Thankfully, the saving grace was that she did not have to deal with anybody anymore. Under the Queen's orders, and thinking that this was probably the last day of her life, the rest of the Amazons did not bother Diana anymore. Naruto and Kyubi were also given rooms in the Queen's residence where they were going to stay in for the night. They were going to open the gates of Tartarus the next day. While Wonder Woman was still steaming in her embarrassment, she heard a knock on the door. She sat up and quickly tidied her bed a little and ran her hands through her long hair, trying to make herself somewhat presentable. Who is it? She asked. It's me. Recognizing the owner of the voice, her blush returned on her face at full force. Go away. Swine. The newcomer, however, opened the door and stepped inside. Seeing her angry and embarrassed face, the blush marring her cheeks and the glare in her eyes made him grin widely from one ear to another. Wearing a simple white Amazonian robe, with her long hair flowing smoothly down her back and her face flushing, she looked like an innocent and shy maiden. Crap, she's so cute. He had to force himself to keep his face serious. After he had narrowly evaded her sword back in the throne room and ran away, the princess refused to speak to him for several hours. Now, he came to her room to make amends. "I'm sorry, Diana," he said. "How could you embarrass me like that in front of Mother?" She blew up, her face becoming redder the more she thought about it. When she recalled the way her mother stood mouth agape when she heard his words, the princess buried her face in her palms. Naruto closed the distance and tentatively put his hands on her shoulders, inwardly expecting her to push him away. "What would you have wanted me to do? She's the one that asked what I liked the most about you while using the lasso of truth." I had to answer, didn't I? When she looked up at him, he could feel the heat that her face was radiating. "You didn't have to go into such perverted details." Naruto involuntarily smiled again. "You're laughing. I'm dying of shame here and you're laughing." She jeered at him. "I can't help it. You're just too cute. And you're a pervert. Pig. Hey, what's wrong with perving on my girl?" he said with a grin. "Who am I going to perv on if not on you?" She did not answer, but she returned his hug and buried her face into the crook of his neck. They stood embraced like that for a while, in calming silence. "Although you're a pervert, I still love you. Be grateful for it," she mumbled into his neck, making him smile. Wonder Woman had gone through a complete roller coaster of emotions that day. First, early in the morning, having a life and death battle against a bloodlust Kryptonian. Then, her friends and teammates condemned her for killing Maxwell Lord. Then, Zeus basically sent her to die to Tartarus. They're thinking that if Hades isn't going to kill me himself, the creatures of Tartarus or Hera's assassins will. After that, she saw tens of thousands of people in New York, demanding her death. The very people that she had risked her life countless times to protect. Lastly, she felt the sweetness of being loved and supported by Naruto. Though the incident during the interrogation embarrassed her to end, deep down she was secretly elated. No woman would ever say that they hated the fact that their significant other was head over heels in love with them. Thinking of that, Diana took the initiative to raise her head and captured his lips in a kiss. That chaste kiss soon became something more when her tongue slipped through his lips and intertwined with his. They parted for a short moment to breathe, but they dived back seeking the other's lips right away. His hands trailed down her back, feeling her waist and momentarily stopped on her butt cheeks. She moaned provocatively in his mouth to excite him when he squeezed her ass. Although they did not voice it out, they both knew what was coming. That it was finally time. She embraced his neck and bounced into his arms, her long legs naturally wrapping around his waist. Holding her into his arms, he kissed her deeply as he carried her to her queen-sized bed. He put her down gently and Diana momentarily let go of him to pull and tug at his top. Still wearing a charming flush on her face, the pupils of her eye dilated when she took in his well-built chest and shoulders, resulted after a century of working as a shinobi and a mercenary. When she looked up and met his eyes, she felt heat pooling in her stomach. But she broke eye contact when she noticed his hands going to the buckle of his belt and taking off his pants too. Her blue eyes became wider when he saw all of him, towering and ready to go. "We're finally going to do it. We're going to do it here, on Themyscira, where men are not allowed." She was the princess of the Amazons, a maiden that was not supposed to mingle with men. And she was definitely not supposed to have sex on Themyscira of all places, a few rooms away from her mother, on a land that was forbidden to men. Those two thoughts set her on fire. The taboo nature of what they were about to do had her start breathing heavily in arousal. He did not have a chance to react before he found himself on his back. Straddling his waist, she started grinding her hips on him and kissed him aggressively, as if she was trying to swallow his tongue. But he was not going to let her fully dominate him. He rolled with her on the bed and Diana ended on the bottom, with him on top of her. She struggled to get back on top, and he instinctively entered the Sage mode to become strong enough to pin her down. They glared at each other as if they were rivals for a few moments. Neither one wanted to submit. "I've waited for this for so long," he said, his voice rasped with arousal. "And that is only your fault," she retorted. "I've wanted you for months. But isn't it better now? After I got your mother's blessing? From now on, you are mine, Diana. Mine only." The possessiveness of that statement sent tingles to her core. Pinning her hands above her head together with one of his other hand came to cup her cheek. His thumb tenderly traced her jaw and chin, but when it touched her luscious lower lip, she took him by surprise by suddenly taking it in her mouth and sucking on it. Fuck, that's so hot. Even if he was using senjutsu-empowered strength to pin her hands down, she was still physically more powerful than him and could have broken free. But the feeling of being under his control turned her on as she had never expected. When he leaned in and started to pepper her neck with kisses, the pleasure made her involuntarily squirm and use her enormous strength to break free. When his lips came to her collarbone and started going further south, Diana suddenly ripped her own robe apart, exposing her bare chest to him. The twin, perfectly shaped and voluptuous mounds, and the pointy peaks and the dark pink areola around them, left him mesmerized. She was turned on too badly, too impatient to let him admire her in a daze for long. She pulled him to her chest and pushed the back of his head, making him almost forcibly bury his face in them. He was not complaining. Not one bit. Her back arched when his lips found her nipples and started to suck on them. Licking, sucking, kissing and groping her breasts, he lost himself in the paradise of her womanly charms. For Diana, his ministrations were like pouring oil on a fire. Her thighs started rubbing against each other as her core began itching and tingling with arousal. "Naruto, please." Kissing his way down from her breasts, Naruto once again was filled with euphoria. He had not lied when he said that her athleticism was what attracted him the most. He kissed and groped her toned abs passionately, inching down at a snail's pace. By now, the princess was completely wet. Her breath quickened when he felt his lips going closer to her most private place, and she willingly spread her legs open for him. But he kissed his way around it, avoiding it on purpose. When his teeth gently sank into the tender skin of her inner thigh, he drew a loud gasp from her, as if she was choking. Her back arched and her hips unconsciously rose from the bed. She fell back on the bed, but her thighs continued to spasm and shake as a small trickle of fluid leaked from her pussy and stained the white bedsheets beneath. He looked at her in wonder. Though a virgin, he had read and watched enough porn to know what she had just experienced. What she was still experiencing, seeing as her orgasm had yet to end. His switch was flipped. He dived between her legs and started to kiss her pussy lips hungrily. When the tip of his tongue touched a particular nub, Diana's strong thighs suddenly clenched around his head. "Stop. I can't." "Ah." She cried out in rapture. With her hands, she was pushing his head away, but with her thighs, she was locking it in against her pussy. It was like she did not know what she wanted. Her brain wanted the pleasure to stop, but her body hungered for more, if how she was desperately bucking against his mouth was anything to go by. For Naruto, it looked like his dream to die smothered by Diana's thick thighs was going to come true much sooner than he had expected. He did not realize how close he had been to dying by suffocation, until her thighs finally released him 2 minutes later, and he started gasping and coughing for air. With his tongue still feeling the slightly sweet taste of her juices, he looked in awe at the perverse image in front of him. The otherwise proper and serious Amazon princess who never even said bad words was now lying naked on her back, her hands gripping at ripped pieces of the bedsheets, and her hips were bucking slowly in post-orgasmic bliss. As for Diana, she had lost her mind during those few minutes. She had never thought sex could feel that good. 3,000 years was a very long time, and although she had never slept with a man before, she had tasted the pleasures of the flesh with some of her Amazon sisters in the past. However, she had never had an orgasm like that before. It was not that Naruto was more skilled than the Amazons with whom she had slept before. After all, it was his first time doing it. It's different. It's different when it's with the one I love. Her mind was still reeling from the shock of sensations that her body had gone through. When she finally came around and looked at him, she quickly sat up scared. Great Athena, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, oh my goddess. The sides of Naruto's face and his ears were an angry shade of red, bearing the marks of how Wonder Woman's thighs had constricted him when he went down on her. She touched his face and ears in worry, hoping he was all right. He chuckled. Don't worry, I'm fine. You almost made my death wish come true. In spite of herself, she started laughing too at the ridiculousness of the situation. But inwardly she was alarmed. She knew her strength very well. If it was a regular human, I would have probably killed him unknowingly. She sighed in relief that it was him and not someone else. It's like we're perfect for each other. She thought dreamily. I love you, she said and leaned in, kissing him again on the lips. Tasting herself in his mouth did not disgust her. If anything, it only served to turn her on even more. She pushed him down and this time she consciously used her great strength to keep him pinned there. Even if he activated his Sage mode again, he would not be able to break free from her grasp. I let you have your way with me. It's my turn to be on top. She straddled his hips, and he stopped resisting her. So beautiful, so hot, he said, his eye drinking in her appearance. She knew that too, but she never got tired of hearing him expressing his admiration. She bent down to kiss him again, her large breasts putting a pleasant weight on his chests. But then she sat up and smiled at him seductively as her hand came to wrap around him. She raised her hips and lined him with her entrance. While looking him in the eyes, she let herself sink slowly on his dick. But when his bulbous head penetrated her virgin pussy, she could no longer maintain eye contact. That first thrust made her close her eyes and she threw her head back, moaning, her back arched in untold pleasure. Naruto, to his great shame, lost it the first moment that her warmth engulfed him. He began thrusting into her unconsciously as he spurted his seed inside her. The way she threw her head back and moaned, and seeing how her sexy abs contracted when she took him in, coupled with feeling the heat and the tightness of his first pussy proved to be too much for him. He had already been on the brink of exploding after he saw the way she orgasmed before. He emptied himself in her womb. But he was not the only one to lose his control. He had been so consumed by his own euphoria that he had not noticed that Diana too orgasmed the moment his dick bottomed her out. She had lost her barrier thousands of years ago in training. The slight feeling of discomfort from her walls accommodating her first penis ever fell short in intensity compared to the pleasant feeling of warmth and fullness. And when his head incidentally brushed by a particular spot, it was like an electric current shocked her. Her back arched and her walls clamped like a vice around him. Just the thought of him spilling his seed inside her and making her pregnant triggered a smaller, secondary orgasm. Her body devoid of strength, she let herself fall on top of him bonelessly, breathing with difficulty. It took a few good minutes for them to recollect themselves and gather their wits. I'm sorry. It just felt too good. I couldn't last, he said quietly, his face burning with shame. Fortunately, as she laid on top of him with her chin above his shoulder, she could not see his face. Don't worry. We have all night, she whispered and her teeth nipped and pulled at the lobe of his ear. I'm going to fuck you until you can't walk. He had never heard her speaking vulgarly before. It was because she was so prim and proper all the time that her dirty talking turned him on so badly that his stomach twisted. As he was still inside her, flaccid, Diana suddenly moaned erotically in his ear when she felt him rise to stand at full mast again. Their organs dripping with fluids, a repetitive wet smacking sound rang in the room alongside their grunts and moans as the princess started riding him. Wanting it rougher, she sat up, and after putting her hands on his chest, Diana started slamming her hips against him faster and faster, getting wilder by the second. The smacks their hips produced became even louder, and two of the bed's legs suddenly snapped with a loud crack from the powerful impacts. "I love you. I love you, Naruto. I love you," she said repeatedly, almost like a chant, as she slammed herself against him so hard that it hurt him. He was torn between being scared and aroused. This new facet of Diana was something he had not seen coming. One particular hard thrust forced him to enter into his Bijou mode to keep up with her. A yellow-red cloak of chakra engulfed his body, but with them being connected the way they currently were, his chakra seeped into her body too, engulfing her like himself. The stimulation of her chakra coursing through her body, while she was furiously riding him, proved to be too much. Her eyes rolled into the back of her head and she fell on her back, fluids gushing from her pussy like a faucet. Void. He could not help calling out to the abstract entity above him as he tried to calm down the frantic beating of his heart. His mind recalled a saying that he had seen on the internet: a lady in the streets and a freak in the sheets. He had just gotten a taste of that. Remembering the way she thrashed as she squeezed her thighs around his head, and the way she started riding him so wildly that she broke the bed, got him to harden again. She was saying I was a pervert, but it was the pot calling the kettle back. He thought and chuckled. He pulled himself out of her, and then he took her in his arms, bringing her in a proper position to sleep. The bed was inclined due to the two legs that snapped while she was riding him. The bedsheets were stained with their fluids, and they were both a sweaty mess, but Naruto could not bring himself to care at that moment. He could not remember when was the last time he had been as tired as in the present. Pulling Diana closer into his arms, he hugged her dearly to his chest. "I can't believe such an amazing woman is mine. Sleep well, princess. I love you," he whispered, and then closed his eyes, falling asleep. Chapter 37. Through the Gates of Tartarus. The Amazon society did not consist of warriors only. Not all Amazons liked violence, and not all of them could fight. A good number of them were farmers, livestock caretakers, some were teachers, others were attendants at the royal palace, and so on. For a community to function in peace for over 3,000 years, completely isolated from the outside world, it had to be self-sustaining. My queen, Princess Diana, and the guests have settled in their rooms. One warrior has been assigned to guard each of their rooms, as a precautionary measure, one of Hippolyta's closest attendants said. "It is not necessary, Phoebe," Hippolyta said. "Diana is my daughter. As for the man she brought with her, I have tested him with the lasso of truth. He bears no ill intent towards us." The woman in question, Phoebe, was very surprised to hear that. During the interrogation, the only people present in the throne room had been the queen, the princess, Naruto, Kyuubi, and Artemis, who got knocked out cold before the questioning actually started. That said, the rest of the Amazons did not know what had transpired there. In a way, the embarrassing moment happened in the family, and would remain in the family, so to speak. No outsiders were aware of it. "What about Artemis? Is she all right?" Hippolyta asked. "She suffered a minor concussion. Nothing serious. A bit of rest is all she needs for a full recovery," Phoebe said. Hesitatingly, she asked, "What happened to her? Did that man dash?" "It is a private matter, not something to gossip about," Hippolyta said, and Phoebe obediently lowered her head. "Yes, my queen. As absurd as it may sound, the man that came with Diana is a good person." Seeing the skeptical look on her attendant's face, Hippolyta continued. "Most men are indeed selfish, violent, cruel, and wicked. That is the truth. However, there are no absolutes in this world. Not all men are evil, though few in number, there are exceptions too. Just like how not all Amazons are good people. Women are capable of terrible things too, are they not? Otherwise, we wouldn't need to have a prison, would we? Not only that the Amazon society was self-sustaining, but it also had everything that a properly working community should have. There were a school and a college for education, a coliseum, and a racing field for entertainment purposes, a very impressive library for cultural purposes, 2 temples dedicated to the 2 most important patron goddesses of the Amazons, training grounds and barracks, a hospital, the Queen's Palace, a research center dedicated to studying magic and technology, a craftsman center for economic purposes, and even spots for relaxing such as a swimming pool, a park, and a hot spring. Naturally, there was a prison on Themyscira too. With thousands of women living on the same island, it was natural for some conflicts to arise between some of them once in a while. If someone was too much of a troublemaker, they would be sent to the prison on Reform Island, one of the several smaller islands around Themyscira. Though the Amazons' land was called Paradise Island, it was not just one island, it was an archipelago. This man is one of those few exceptions. He truly cares about my daughter, and he is willing to even follow her through the gates of Tartarus. He is ready to trade his life to protect her. I could not hope for a better companion for her. Ask yourself, if one of your Amazon sisters was to be sent by the gods to Tartarus, would you follow her? The attendant looked like she had a lot on her mind after hearing what her queen said. You can retire for the night, Phoebe. Yes. Good night, my queen, Phoebe said. She brought a hand to her chest and bowed before leaving. Phoebe's body was on autopilot as she headed towards the servants' quarter. Like every other Amazon on the island, her instructors had taught her and warned her repeatedly about the wickedness of men and the evils in the man's world. There were no illiterate people on Themyscira. All Amazons studied in the school on the island various courses such as literature, warfare, grammar, maths, music and arts etc. Among the classes taught in school, there was also one called Man's World, which was, simply put, just biased propaganda against men and the society outside of their island. But the Queen's words earlier clashed against the things that she had been taught to believe from the beginning. As she was walking absent-mindedly through the corridor heading towards her quarters, a tremor suddenly shook the entire palace. An earthquake? Phoebe muttered to herself in surprise. But then, another tremor followed. And another one. And another one. Her expression changed. No, it's not an earthquake. Although she was a non-combatant Amazon, she still took her duties very seriously. Her job was to attend to Her Majesty, the Queen of the Amazons. She broke into a run, rushing back towards the Queen's chambers to confirm her safety. But the rhythmical and constant tremors of the building made Phoebe lose her footing and fall on the floor with a thud. Enemy attack! She yelled at the top of her lungs. But her screams were not necessary to alert the others because all the guards stationed at the palace that night flooded the corridors armed to the teeth. The repeated tremors made the Amazons on duty quickly realize that it was clearly not an earthquake, and that it was coming from somewhere inside the palace, not from outside. Following the tremors, over 30 Amazons wielding swords, shields, and spears arrived in front of the princess's chambers. To their surprise, however, there was another female warrior stationed by the door. By the looks of it, she was struggling to maintain her composure and keep her spear and shield straight. She was subtly rubbing her thighs against each other, and it could be seen even despite the helmet on her head that her face was flushed. "Sister, are you all right? What's happening beyond that door?" The Amazon guarding the princess's chamber was spared from answering that question when a wanton moan came from the room and another tremor shook the entire building. One of the more simple-minded Amazons asked naively, "Why is the princess crying?" "Move aside, sister, we have to save her." "Is that man inside? Is he hurting her?" But the female warrior guarding the door blocked her way. "You're not allowed to enter." "Why? Are you perhaps in cohorts with that man?" This treachery won't go unpunished. The naive Amazon started yelling self-righteously, but one of her friends pulled her back before things escalated any further. "Hey, Penelope, let go, what's the big idea?" The naive Amazon tried to break free. Another erotic moan came from the other side of the door, and a tremor made the palace shake again. By now, most of the Amazons gathered there were starting to feel hot under the collar. For anyone with a modicum of common sense, it was impossible to not understand what was actually going on at that moment inside their dear princess's chamber. Since you don't get it, I'll spell it for you. The princess is having intercourse. The Amazon guarding the chamber spat out, blushing furiously. Intercourse? The naive female said dumbly. They're fucking each other's brains out like animals in heat. Is that clear enough for you? Great Hera, why are you so stupid? The Amazon stationed in front of the door screamed, unable to cope with the embarrassing situation anymore. Please keep my daughter safe. She is my little sun and stars. Hippolyta said, looking at Diana tenderly. But Wonder Woman could not meet her eyes. Ever since she woke up that day, it was like she was suffering from a constant fever. How could I have acted in such a manner? Her cheeks were burning whenever her mind went to the debauchery from the night before. She was so ashamed that she had not met with any of her Amazon sisters the entire morning. It was only now, when they were preparing to open the gates of Tartarus, that she finally left her chambers to speak with her mother one last time. Don't worry, Mother. Diana is strong enough to take care of herself. I'm only tagging along for fun. And of course, to make sure nothing unexpected happens. Hippolyta's left eye started twitching for some reason, maybe because he was already calling her mother as if he was already her son-in-law? Or maybe because he was treating a perilous journey to kill the god of the underworld, in his own world, as if it was some recreational trip. I've never seen someone as thick-skinned as you, Hippolyta said in exasperation. A glance at her daughter, however, let her know that despite how she was steaming in shame, Diana was beaming from happiness. Do not underestimate the dangers of Tartarus. Hades is the brother of Zeus, the king of Olympus. And you will be intruding into his domain. She exhorted. I know you are very powerful, probably almost as powerful as a god. You are the very reason why I was forced to reveal the truth to Diana about her true origins. However, magic works in mysterious ways. True gods are gods for a reason. Despite his cheeky behavior, Naruto nodded obediently this time. I won't let my guard down, Mother. I promise. Hippolyta smiled at him. Then, she opened her arms and looked at her daughter. The princess listened to her non-verbal plea and came to her. Mother and daughter embraced each other dearly. Showing a measure of tact that would have never been seen at him when he was a kid back in the elemental nations, Naruto left the throne room, giving Diana and Hippolyta a moment of privacy. The squad of Amazons stationed in the halls of the palace were watching him intently, not missing any of his movements. But strangely enough, most of them were avoiding making eye contact with him. Even with how thick-skinned he was, Naruto could not help scratching his cheek in slight embarrassment. It's all because of her. That perverted princess. It was not hard for him to guess why. To say that Wonder Woman had been a bit too vocal during their activities last night would be an understatement. But in spite of his thoughts, he smiled fondly and chuckled. He had definitely not expected Wonder Woman to have such a wild and perverted side to her. But he was not complaining. Not in the least. The entrance to Tartarus was located below Paradise Island, in an underground space holding the ruins of an ancient city. The only intact structure in the ruined city was what looked like the grandiose entrance of a temple built in a cliff. It was the gates of Tartarus. A stone key was inserted into a special lock and, following that, the enormous gates of Tartarus were opened with a loud grating sound. All that could be seen through the entrance was just a rock bridge traversing a sea of fire. Hippolyta embraced Diana one more time. Go. May Goddess Athena give you strength. When they parted, Naruto's voice came from behind Diana. Don't I get a hug too? The Amazons standing by the queen's side immediately brandished their spear at him threateningly. Step away from the queen, they yelled. Naruto raised his hands and stepped back. Sheesh, you women need to lighten up a little. Hippolyta found herself smiling. She was beginning to see why her daughter liked him. She and the rest of the Amazons were very tense and somber, looking almost as if they were at a funeral, but he was relaxed and even cracked jokes at a time like that. His easygoing and likable personality managed to get under one's skin very quickly. You will get your hug after you bring my daughter back safely, Hippolyta said. Naruto perked up and grinned. It's a promise then. Don't you dare go back on your word. Diana pulled one of his hands almost petulantly. Are you trying to woo my mother now? Let's go already. He burst into laughter. Okay, let's go. With that, he stopped joking around and headed towards the gates. A nine-tailed fox cub was already waiting for them in front of the gates, flicking his fluffy tails restlessly. His vertical pupils were pinned on the bridge traversing the sea of fire. Naruto grabbed Kyuubi by the scruff of his neck and placed him on his shoulder. Then man, woman and fox stepped through the gates into Tartarus. The Amazons were quick to push the gates after them, but right before they were completely closed, a peculiar snake slithered its way through. As the three of them walked across the bridge, Naruto and Kyuubi looked around curiously. So, this is how the afterlife looks like, Naruto said. Not exactly, Diana replied. This is just Tartarus, the hellish part of the afterlife. This is where the sinners and those who have angered the gods of Olympus go. The souls of people who have led a virtuous life are sent to Elysium, to paradise. So can you find here jerks like that dude that started World War II on Earth? He asked. Wonder Woman shook her head. You mean Hitler? He came from a Christian background. He's most likely in Christian's version of hell. Different pantheons don't intrude in each other's domain. I wonder where did the Psion's souls go after I killed them? Kyuubi said from atop Naruto's shoulder. Diana shrugged. I have no idea. I don't know what gods they believe in. What about atheists? Naruto asked another question. How is the afterlife of those that don't believe in the existence of gods? I've never asked myself that, to be honest. It's an interesting question. I'd like to know that too, Diana said. As they chatted about this and that, the end of the bridge came in sight. However, when they reached the head of the bridge, an enormous creature's threatening growl greeted them. The relaxing mood from before dissipated, and the princess unsheathed her sword and grabbed her shield. This is Cerberus, the three-headed dog of Hades, one of the guardians of Tartarus, Diana said tensely. Naruto looked in interest at the monster ahead of them. It was an over 20 feet tall creature weighing several tons. Its skin was pitch black and rock-like formations grew out from its body like protective armor. But the most noticeable thing about the creature was its three very ugly and large dog heads. The creature's gaping maws revealed several rows of jagged teeth that looked like daggers, and the drool falling from its mouths was making sizzling sounds when it fell on the ground, melting it. Right as Wonder Woman was bracing herself for a vicious fight against the huge three-headed monster, the tiny fox cub jumped off Naruto's shoulder. Then, an enormous silhouette appeared. It made the already large Cerberus appear like a small pup in comparison. The monster's three pairs of eyes widened in fear as it took in the sight of a creature even more monstrous than itself. Hundreds of feet tall, crimson-red fur and 9 enormous tails that stirred powerful gales with simple flicks. Cerberus' ears fell flat on its head, and its spiky tail was tucked between its legs. When a demonic growl came from the enormous behemoth, the three-headed monster let itself fall flat on its belly and started whimpering submissively. A dark chuckle came from the demonic 9-tailed fox. You're not just a stupid mongrel after all, are you? At least you do know who's the boss. Kyuubi's voice rumbled, making the Cerberus whimper even more pitifully. Listen here, mutt. Do you want to live? The dog's 3 heads nodded fervently at his question. If you want to live, you're going to be my bitch. Any problems with that? The fox's demonic voice rang. Cerberus shook its 3 heads humbly and prostrated itself in front of the godlike being towering above it. Ha ha ha. Very good. Now, stand on 2 feet and bow to me. The 3-headed dog gave its all to stand on 2 feet and struggled to maintain its balance as it bowed. Now sit. The guardian of Tartarus did as told and sat down. Roll. Cerberus rolled obediently. It even let its tongue hang out of its mouth and attempted to smile, as if it was very happy to follow any order. The enormous fox's laughter boomed in satisfaction. Wahaha! This is so fun! Naruto, look, I got myself a new toy. Naruto was laughing out loud too at the Bijou's antics. Wonder Woman was looking at the surreal scene in front of her with an incredulous face. She and the rest of the Amazons had been told many stories about the gods and various creatures that had submitted to them. Cerberus was a famous creature in their legends, one said to be a fiercely loyal and vicious servant of the god of the underworld, Hades. Yet he was reduced to this? Diana thought. She put a hand on her forehead. Just then, Kyuubi grabbed a large piece of rock from the ground and threw it. Cerberus burst into a sprint, giving its all to catch the rock. Then, it came back to Kyuubi, wagging its tail. Good boy. Kyuubi chortled. He took the rock from Cerberus' middle mouth and then threw it again. Just like before, the 3-headed dog burst into a mad dash to catch the rock, as if its life depended on it. Single-mindedly chasing the rock with everything it had, Cerberus tunnel-visioned on the piece of rock, losing track of anything else in its surroundings. Its jump was almost majestic when it launched itself from the ground and caught the rock in midair. Splash! Dark laughter reverberated in the abyss. Kyuubi started beating the ground with his fists, laughing his ass off. Wahaha! What a stupid dog! Ahaha! So focused the 3-headed dog had been on catching the rock, that it had not noticed that Kyuubi had thrown the rock towards the sea of fire to their side. It jumped off the bridge, into the chasm, into the lava below. The Cerberus wailed in agony and struggled in despair to escape. But its death cries did not last for long. A few moments later, its howls ceased. The 3-headed monster disappeared below the boiling surface of the sea of fire. Only the Bijou's cruel laughter could still be heard. Damn, Kurama, you're sick. You didn't have to do him dirty like that. Naruto said. Nonetheless, he had lived with the fox for over a century. He had long gotten used to Kyuubi's twisted personality. Wonder Woman appeared to be disturbed by what had happened. She had nothing against someone killing their enemies when necessary, but the fox's cruelty startled her. She had gotten so used to seeing the cute and fluffy fox cub that purred under her caresses that she had forgotten that the fox was a being capable of destroying planets, to say nothing about toying with a monster to its death. Chapter 38 Tartarus I. Numbering in the thousands, humanoid, with pitch-black skin, faces and wings like those of a bat, and with vicious claws on each of their forelimbs, it was a horde of lesser demons. Souls of the damned which, after millennia of torture and punishment, had become insane and turned into bloodthirsty demons. A massive crimson fox with 9 equally enormous tails was wreaking havoc in the demon horde's ranks. Each tail would reduce the dozens of demons to a bloody paste with every sweep. Though they had become insane, it was not as though they no longer had any intelligence left. Seeing their kin being obliterated so easily, the horde gave the behemoth a wide berth. From a distance, hundreds of them opened their maws and hundreds of fire bolts were shot at the Bijou. Using fire against me? Imbeciles! Kyuubi roared with laughter. His enormous mouth opened and a massive torrent of fire covered the entire plateau. Nearly 500 demons were annihilated with a single attack. Not even ash was left behind them. Flames hotter than the sun erased them from existence. As they were souls and this was Tartarus, they would eventually be regenerated to suffer more torture, but that was not going to happen in the immediate future. Naruto and Wonder Woman were not watching idly either. He went through a short sequence of hand seals, and the air distorted as a ball of pressurized wind was shot from his mouth. Wind release, vacuum sphere. As the ball of wind traveled through the air, its size continued to increase to the point where it was as large as a car. Then, it exploded. All demons in a 50-foot radius from the center of the explosion were reduced to mincemeat. Show off, Wonder Woman said, almost pouting. One-on-one, she had been able to fight on equal grounds even against an enraged Kryptonian. Her strength was not questionable. However, she did not have many means of causing mass destruction, area of effect spells, or techniques. From the corner of her eyes, she was looking in slight envy at how easily Naruto dispatched tens of demons with any random attack. In contrast, with her god-slaying sword in her right hand and her golden lasso in her left, she could only kill 2 to 3 of them at a time. I'm not showing off. I'm actually being lazy, he said. His hands went through another short sequence of hand seals and dozens of feet-long rock spikes burst from the ground, impaling the unsuspecting demons charging at him. If I was to get serious, I'd make a few hundred clones and blast them all with a barrage of Rasengan. Or go into my chakra mode and nuke them all with a Bijudama. As he was speaking, his hands stayed busy, continuing forming hand seals and casting various wind, lightning, and earth techniques. He stood in one place leisurely as wind blades, lightning bolts, and earth spikes caused a massacre amidst the demons' ranks. Wonder Woman flicked the blood off her sword and sheathed it. She felt as if she was riding a bus. Kyuubi was killing hundreds of demons per minute without breaking a sweat, and Naruto was lazily killing dozens at a time too. With or without her number of kills, it was pretty much the same. Instead of wasting her energy fruitlessly, she came next to Naruto to chat with him. I used to be terrified at the thought of Tartarus before. She thought, inwardly amused. While most people on Earth did not care or believe that hell existed, the Amazons had solid proof it existed. After all, they were guarding its very gates. Having the certainty that there was an inescapable place of eternal suffering and damnation in the afterlife was enough to instill fear into anyone's heart. To think that one day I would come to Tartarus, not as a departed spirit, but to kill Hades, the god of underworld. She was marveling at how much her situation changed ever since Naruto and Kyuubi came into her life. Giving up already? Naruto asked with a chuckle when he saw her coming by his side. You're killing everything alone. Especially Kurama, look at him, Diana said. The two of them took a look at Kyuubi, who seemed like he was in the ninth heaven as he killed demons wantonly. Every time he killed a few hundreds of demons at once, he would burst into laughter. He was filled with glee. I tend to forget how dangerous he is when all he does is to purr and cuddle in my lap, she remarked. But the way he delights in slaughter, and the way he killed Cerberus a while ago. Naruto shrugged his shoulders. He's always been like that. Back in our homeworld, he wreaked havoc for nearly 1,000 years. Before 2 incredibly powerful shinobi came into the world, the reincarnations of the 2 sons of the god of shinobi, nobody had been able to subdue him. The nine-tailed demon fox was considered the embodiment of rage, a force of nature bent on destruction. His hands became covered in lightning, and a beast of lightning similar to a wolf was launched forth. It lunged at the closest demon and passed through it like a ghost, leaving only a charred corpse in its wake. It zapped through a group of demons at a speed faster than the naked eye could follow, making them all collapse at the same time. The beast of lightning reduced in size every time it passed through a demon's body, but it managed to kill over 20 of them by the time it finally dissipated completely. He's mellowed down a lot ever since we became friends. Nowadays he's not attacking any humans or innocent living beings indiscriminately. But there's nothing holding back his explosive temper or his appetite for destruction when it comes to his enemies. And I have nothing against that. Being kind to your enemy is cruelty towards yourself. It's not something that I could understand back in my homeworld when I was a naive kid, but a century of roaming the universe hammered that concept into me. This is a dog-eat-dog world. Naruto and Diana kept chatting in a relaxed manner, while he and Kyuubi were easily killing the waves of demons coming at them. However, after a while, his expression started to change. "This isn't good." "What's wrong?" she asked. "I didn't notice it at first, but my chakra isn't regenerating like always. I can't sense any natural energy either. These demons are weak, but they're endless. Tartarus has hundreds of millions if not billions of souls imprisoned in it. You're going to run out of chakra long before the demons exhaust their numbers," Diana said, realizing the meaning of his words. Naruto nodded and then yelled, "Kurama, my chakra isn't regenerating. I can't absorb natural energy either. We have to pull back." Though Kyuubi had immersed himself in the pleasure of violently killing the demons, he had never lost his sense of reason. He understood immediately that the situation was not favorable to them at all. Due to how late Naruto unsealed him from his body, he had been in his mid-40s. A part of the Bijuu was left behind forever. In his new body, the fox could no longer regenerate chakra by himself. In the past, Kyuubi had acted like a chakra battery for Naruto, but nowadays the roles were reversed. Nowadays, it was Naruto that was acting as the battery to offer the fox a level of power even comparable to the ten-tailed beast of their homeworld, giving him the godlike strength that allowed him to even destroy a planet. However, without Naruto to resupply him with energy, his personal reserves of chakra were limited. He could not afford to waste his chakra on dealing with the small fry anymore. A powerful roar roused a gale of wind that cleared the entire battlefield for half a mile in a fan shape in front of the fox. The Bijuu's mere roar was enough to flatten entire forests, to say nothing of the horde of lesser demons. Nonetheless, peace only lasted for a few moments. As if they knew not the meaning of fear, another wave of demons surged towards them like the tidal waves of the sea. Kyuubi's gigantic silhouette abruptly shrunk until he became only a tiny fox cub, and he ran towards Naruto and Wonder Woman, hopping on his favorite spot on his shoulder. "If you can't regenerate your chakra, we can't waste any time anymore. Any moment is precious. We have to find that god and kill it as fast as possible," Kyuubi said. Naturally, Naruto agreed with him. "But how are we going to find him? I can't enter Sage mode here. My negative emotion sensing is of no use either. This place is an ocean of negative emotions," the fox said. "I can use my lasso of truth to mind control someone and lead us to Hades' hideout. But we need to find an intelligent being first," Wonder Woman said and took flight. Air currents swirled around Naruto's body, and he followed her, flying in the air. However, the fact that they were flying did not mean they were safe from the horde of demons below. If that had been the case, they would have not chosen to fight against them on the ground before. The thousands of demons below spread their wings and pursued them, while letting out chilling shrieks. "Naruto, Kurama, cover your ears," Wonder Woman said, and the two of them did not question her orders. The Amazon princess suddenly slammed her forearms against each other, particularly her two bracelets of submission. It was like the air was ruptured. A sonic boom exploded and the shockwave cleared the dark sky around her group for almost half a mile. The demons dropped from the sky on the rocky and ashy ground below like flies, wailing and screeching in agony as their eardrums burst up, and even some of their internal organs exploded because of the sound wave. "Holy crap!" Naruto muttered, having gotten a feeling of vertigo himself, even after covering his ears and despite his superhuman body. He became dizzy for a brief moment. "I got you," Wonder Woman said and grabbed him from behind, under his armpits. "Sorry, it was the only way to quickly get rid of them," she said apologetically. She would have not used that move if it had not been for how urgent the situation was, because it was not wise to use a technique that harmed her allies. The thousands of demons below learned their lesson, and did not attempt to fly again after them. However, that still did not mean that the three of them were safe. The demons opened their jaws at the same time, and the dark sky of Tartarus was lighted up like New Year's night sky on Earth by fireworks. When thousands of fireballs were launched in the sky, Diana's expression changed greatly at the sight of them. With Naruto in her arms and with Kyuubi on his shoulder, the princess left sonic booms in her wake as she broke the sound barrier with her flight, avoiding most of the fireballs. However, there were just too many, there were thousands of them. Content with being carried by the Amazon, he could not fly that fast regardless. Naruto's hands formed a dog seal. Then, an absurd amount of water burst from his mouth. The princess herself was shocked when he spat out so much water that it looked as if the dam of a reservoir was broken. It was water release, exploding water colliding wave. Like the violent waves of a furious river, the water he released doused the thousands of fireballs coming from below and swept clean the entire plateau. Momentarily, Wonder Woman looked at the scenery of destruction below in amazement. If you could do that, why didn't you do it from that start? Despite their temporary victory, Naruto did not show any signs of joy. Using a water technique of this magnitude in a place like this, amidst lava and burning flames in hell. I wasted way too much chakra. In a situation where he could not easily recover his chakra, he would not use such a technique of mass destruction unless it was absolutely necessary. He did not know what other trials and enemies lay ahead of them. He had to ration his chakra usage wisely. The scenery below looked macabre. The entire ground had been covered by ashy brown water, transforming it into a murky lake with thousands of corpses floating on its surface. Noticing the countless demons in the distance flying towards them, Wonder Woman flew away at a high speed with Naruto in her arms. In a particular mountainside of Tartarus, the dark red sky was illuminated by an enormous wheel of fire. It was hundreds of feet in diameter, and it was spinning slowly as it floated in the air. It was not a beautiful sight because bound to the enormous spinning wheel of fire was an equally enormous being. It looked like a normal human male dressed in rags if one was to disregard his size. Rhythmically, every 3 minutes, the flames coating the wheel of fire surged and a savage scream of agony burst from the titanic being's mouth. The hundreds of chains tying his limbs and torso to the wheel would become red and melt his flesh, and the flames themselves would char his body black. However, every time the spinning wheel completed a 360-degree spin, the giant's horrible wounds would magically heal. Then, the torture would commence again and his roars of agony would tear the sky again too. Suddenly, a tiny cuckoo bird fluttered its wings as it flew in the sky graciously. It was an abnormal sight. There were no birds or any other type of living animals in Tartarus. There were no living beings. There were only the souls of the dead, demons, and eternal suffering. The giant bound to the wheel struggled to contain his screams of pain when he noticed the seemingly strange cuckoo bird flying towards him. It was only for a moment though. His roars made the mountainside shake, and this time they weren't screams of pain, but screams filled with anger, with rage. "You! What are you doing here?" The giant screamed and he started pulling at the chains binding him to the flaming wheel fiercely, making them dig into his flesh. "I'll kill you. I will rip you to shreds and feast on your blood when I'm out of here. You depraved bitch, I'll dash." But he choked on his words when the peak of one of the mountains nearby was broken off and slammed into his face. "You will show me respect when you speak to me, mongrel." A royal-sounding female voice came from the bird. The giant gnashed his teeth. Then, he screamed in pain again as the flames coating the wheel surged once more and burned him alive. "You came here to gloat? 3,000 years of being burned alive were not enough torture?" he screamed. The cuckoo bird was suddenly obscured by mist and, with a flash of golden light, a woman appeared in its stead. She looked like royalty, like a queen. There was a golden circular crown on her head, she wore elegant robes with golden ornaments, and a lotus-tipped scepter was in her hand, a symbol of purity. "I do think 3,000 years were enough. Even too much. However, I had no say in your sentence. Do not lie to my face, cow," he shouted, gnashing his teeth to resist the pain from having his body incinerated again by the flaming wheel's surging fire. You are the one who led me on. You conspired with Zeus against me. The woman scoffed. A casual smile was enough for you to become infatuated with me? How laughable. If nothing else, I thought that 3,000 years in the pit of Tartarus would cure your foolishness, but from the looks of it, I was hoping for too much. The queen-like woman tucked a stray strand of her curly brown hair behind her ear and said, Enough with the chit-chat. I have a proposition for you. Do me a favor and I dash. I'd rather die than do anything for you. The giant screamed in rage. You are dead already. The woman pointed out in amusement. Well, if you would rather spend the next few millennia in the same fashion, being burned by the heavenly wheel's fire, instead of roaming free, suit yourself. As she said that, the woman turned around, seemingly about to leave. Wait. The Titanic man's voice rumbled. You have the power to release me from this hell? The woman sneered at him as if that question was an insult to her dignity. What do you think? Does the Queen of Olympus have the power to release you? Another series of screams came from the giant as the spinning wheel of fire burned him alive again. What do you want me to do in exchange for my freedom? He said after he managed to recollect himself and suppress his pain. The self-proclaimed Queen of Olympus said coldly, I need you to kill somebody. That's it for this reading. Hit like and subscribe for a free ticket pass going to the different worlds of anime fanfictions. Looking forward to having you on board again.